This is the page, the cover page of that EnerBee product brochure. The DF33 series 5 amp version, DF63 the 15 amp, DF60 the 45 amp version, and then the EM35M, which is the 50 amp version, and the tooling chart. You're now seeing the screen, Chris?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Thanks for stopping me. So the DF33C, let's start with that one. That would be the 4 to 5 amp version. Allows for resin sealing across the bottom of the connector. It has a positive lock with a clear tactile feel to it and a click that you can hear. And they come in a wide variety, RoHS compliant, of course. You'll see that it's available in both a single row and a double row version for depending on how your board layout is or your space considerations for your layout. Here's a little better view of what that would look like. So you can see that the 4 position down here comes in a double row. It also comes in a straight single row. Same thing with the 6 position. You can get it in a single row or you can get it in a double row, which is a 3x3. So these are the variations that are available for the DF33C. Within the DF33C, the contacts have 2 points of contact, basically a bifurcated contact that would be called. So it's a very stable connection, prevents fretting corrosion because of micro movements during vibration. In fact, it's passed pretty severe vibration testing up to 100 G in 3 different directions, up to 100,000 cycles. So it's a very stable contact. It has a positive lock. Here you can see the lock release. It's kind of like on your RJ45 where you've got a little tab that you press down. In fact, you'll find that similar feature, the lock release, across this entire product line of EnerBee products. You can see that it has resin sealing capability up to 6.5 millimeters, so you can seal the connector onto the board. And this particular series also has an optional retainer, so you can add that once it's fully connected, and it increases the cable pull-out force. The DF33C also has a guide post to prevent misassembly onto the board. So it eliminates defects in your manufacturing process. So there'll be a guidepost only on one side of the connector. It's also available in 2 versions, 2 keying versions. So there's a standard white, which has you can see the key over in this section here. Or the black version has the key towards the center of the connector. This allows you to use 2 connectors in the same application, but you can ensure that they're mated to the proper plug. And some typical applications, typical industrial applications, home appliance, LED lighting, medical industry, robotics industry. A lot of our industrial type customers would use this sort of connector. Let's move on to the next one, which is the DF63 series. We're now moving up from 5 amps to 15 amps. It's a high reliable connector with multiple points of contact. Again, has the same sort of a lock with a clear tactile feel and a click to it. Incorrect mounting and mating are prevented in the way the connector is designed, which we'll see in a couple slides here. Also has resin sealing up to 5 millimeters. Variations, straight, right angle, and inline versions are available, 1 through 6 positions. Of course, UL and CSA certified and glow wire compliant for those appliance applications. So here's some idea of the size of the connector. You can see in the upper left-hand corner here, you've got a vertical version, and then there's a right angle version. straight inline version, and here's an inline version that has a panel mount snap-in feature into the receptacle. So you can mount the receptacle on the front panel of a assembly. The pin contact in the plug side is a nice wide surface for mating. On the receptacle side, you can see it has 3 points of contact. So you guys have a spring-loaded feature that pushes the contact down, and you have 2 points of contact across the bottom. I'm sorry, if you could please mute yourself, that would be help. Thank you. Is that Jose Rivera? Okay, let's continue. Like the other versions, the center lock, there's a center lock option. Not an option, but excuse me, let me see what I can do here. All right, maybe that'll help us. Okay, the slide that we're on here shows that there is the center lock, just like the other versions. Again, that's a simple lock that snaps onto the receptacle. On this version, you can see, like we saw on some of the connectors last month, it has a couple of lock guards so that it prevents unlocking accidentally. Here you can see the locked version here. There is a feature in here where if the contact is not fully inserted into the receptacle, it will not allow the connector to lock. So that's an indicator that you've got a crimp and poke terminal that is not fully inserted or fully seated into the connector. So it's a nice little feature that lets you know that it's not assembled properly. Also, like we saw in one of the previous series, there's an optional retainer to hold the cables into the connector better. It adds additional pull-out force onto the cables. The DF63 has fully boxed plug terminals so that it prevents any accidental shorting. And also it is keyed so it can only mate one direction, so you can't reverse mate the plug to the receptacle. Like the connectors we saw before, there are two options, both in black and white, which are keyed, so you can use two connectors in the same application, but ensure that you have the proper plug inserted into the proper receptacle in the final assembly. And again, accepts resin sealing, in this case up to 5 millimeters high. Let's move on to now the DF22 series. This is a 7.92 pitch connector that's capable of 30 amps now. Low contact resistance because of it for a couple reasons. One of them that it uses a high conductivity material, and it has 4 points of contact in the design. There are keying options like we've seen before, and again, variations in vertical, right angle, and inline connections. UL, CSA, and TUV certified for your applications. So you can see in this terminal here, we now have 4 points of contact. We have one on the left, on the right, bottom, and on the top. So we've got the plug fully engaged in 4 points of contact. The other point we want to focus on here is the material is a high conductive material. Instead of using phosphor bronze or brass, we're using a higher conductivity material for lower power loss. Like the others you've seen, it has a positive lock, the same type of lock with a thumb release on it. It has resin sealing up to 5 millimeters high in this case. It has a positional post to place the connector onto the board to prevent reverse mounting. And there's a molded lance in the contact to avoid tangling or engagement during the assembly process. The DF22 series is available in 3 different colors for 3 different keying options. So just like the previous ones that we saw, you can now use multiple connectors, 3 in this case, in the same application with different cables, and you can ensure that the cables will be mounted to the correct plug. Here's a chart showing a few of the different types. So we've got a standard plug here, or cable terminated plug, a vertical header. Here's a right angle header, inline plug. Here's an inline plug with a panel mount, and then we've got a double row plug and receptacle. So it's a pretty broad product offering within the DF22 series. And let's follow up here with the follow up with the DF60 series. This is again is wire to board up to 45 amps now. We've seen the 2, 3, 4. We're now up to 5 points of contact with independent contact springs. Again, available in straight, right angle, and inline. Available in 1 to 6 positions, keying variations, and UL and TUV certified. DF60 series, you can see here, is available in straight, right angle, and here's an inline with a flange to mount onto a front panel. Here's a little detail of the points of contact. So you can see we've got 3 independent spring contacts, and then we've got 2 stable contacts across the top. So these 3 independent fingers push the plug portion of the connector up onto the top contacts. It's just a little view of the differences in locks. So you can see here there's a lock that we're utilizing, which is a center lock, which is a thumb release. Some of our competitors in a similar product have 2 side locks. So if you're going to use side locks, you have to have a much wider space between the connectors so that you can get your finger in there to release that lock. So here's a little illustration showing 2 connectors of our competitors versus you can put 3 of the Hirose connectors in a row. There are a couple of different keying variations as we talked about. So there's some details on the keys here versus here. So again, you can have multiple connectors on one assembly without worrying of plugging the wrong plug into the wrong receptacle. The DF60 has a center fork lock in this position to prevent tearing the connector off of the board. So that adds some mechanical strength to the connector on the board. A neat little feature on this connector is that it has you can slide a nut into a captive area to allow the connector to be mounted onto a front panel easier. So it has a captive nut built into the connector instead of having an extra nut across the back of the connector. This is a little patented feature that we're offering. And again, applications like we've seen before, but we're getting into a little bit different stuff here. Some power conditioner stuff, some automotive applications, server and motor applications, as well as the medical and robotic things we've seen before. And now we want to follow up finally with the EM35 series. This is a power supply connector, good up to 50 amps. It's a 4-position connector. Available in 2 different types, either a panel mount like you see here, or a DIN rail mount. It has a snap-on feature that allows you to put the connector onto a DIN rail. Easy crimp termination using standard tooling. It has sequential mating, so you establish a ground plane before you get your power into the connector. Flexible, customizable keying combinations, which we'll see. Dust cap available, and UL and TUV certified. So again, has the same type of lock that you've seen on all of the other EnerBee products, which is the thumb release that snaps onto onto the receptacle. Here's a couple of drawings to show you the plug, the receptacle, and here's the connector mounted onto a DIN rail in that application. The mount, excuse me, the receptacle is either front or rear mountable for different applications. Little detail on the contact. Again, you know, we talked earlier about, in previous sessions, about some of these little details are what makes Hirose better. It's not always the outside of the connector you see, but some of the fine details on the inside. So on the left here, you can see here's the contact that's fully exposed. On the right, showing that we put a contact cover on it to help protect the contact to avoid any damage during the application or mating. This slide here is showing you that we've got there is a first make contact. So you establish a ground plane with one contact. There's a distance of 3.5 millimeters between that ground contact mating and the 3 power contacts mating. It's a nice safety feature. And this is, next slide here is showing you the multiple keys. There are actually 10 keying combinations, so you can have multiple connectors on one DIN rail. That would be a very common type of an application. And that's it for today. I'll open it up for any questions if there are any. And again, let me just remind you that the presentation